Hello, I am Kimberly McLemore, and welcome to another episode of 360 and Me with Business as Usual, where all topics are about anything in business. And today, I really wanted to spend some time talking to you about self-publishing. And I'm going to give you some good tips, so I want you all to pay very good attention to this topic of discussion today. Well, first of all, before I get started, I'm sure you all are wondering, what do I know about being a self-publishing author? Well, guess what? I am an award-winning self-publishing author, and as you can see right in front of you, I have a few of my favorite books that I have written, and I'm really excited about this topic, and I love sharing all information with people because, I get this question every day, and if not every day, maybe once a week, maybe if not once a week, several times throughout the year, is that, hey, I want to be an author. So like I said, we're going to talk about some quick tips on what it's going to take for you to be a good self-publishing author. And, I really kind of want to just focus on really understanding why you want to be an author. Self-publishing is not hard, but the one thing I truly try to get people to understand is that it's not easy either. And you have to educate yourself. And if you're not willing to educate yourself, then you're really going to be wasting a lot of time and money and effort on something that you wouldn't take the time to learn properly. Believe me, I know. After going through writing my first book, I was pretty embarrassed because I didn't really know what I was getting into. I depended upon a third party in order to help me get through the process, thinking that I could learn that way and that they would know everything. Well, little do I know is that when it's a third party, you're depending on them for all of the things that need to be done when it comes to publishing a book. And then even though you're still a part of the self-publishing process of it, you still don't own everything. You may own what you wrote, but when it comes to putting the book together, you still have to depend on everybody else to do that when you're using a third-party source. So let's dive into this because I'm really excited. So let's talk about understanding the process. What is self-publishing? Self-publishing is when you decide to write a book and publish to sell to the public for a price. Now, I'm not going to repeat this again, but it's important to understand that when you self-publish and you sell, then you also become a business, and we're going to dive into that a little later. But people say, well, what's the business benefits of self-publishing? There are many benefits to self-publishing. You have 100% control of the entire process of publishing the book. 100% of your royalties actually come to you. And then, of course, after you put in the expenses that you have to do in order to publish the book, and you actually get to keep majority of your profits. But of course, everybody else gets a little tinge of something because even if you're a self-publisher, you still have to go through somebody in order to make the book, right? You've written it, but to create it, to get it published out there, to get it printed, that is still a cost, and that cost is on you. But you do get a majority of that money back. And then, of course, is the production time. The good part about self-publishing these days is that you don't have to have a ton of books sitting on the shelf. They can be printed as they are purchased. So that's another great benefit. And then you can market when you're ready. So whenever you're ready to push that book out some more, and you're saying, hey, I still need some more sales, you have the control of that as well. And then the better part about being a self-publishing author, you get to write whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Nobody's telling you how to do it, when to do it, why you should do it this way. But also remember, depending on your audience, you may not get what you want in the return of your investment. So always think about what you should be writing. Now, I talked a few seconds ago about the fact that when you are an author, you are absolutely an entrepreneur. This is something you need to understand, the importance of the fact that you are in business. It's funny how I've met many people who say, hey, I'm self-publishing a book. I wrote it. It's out there and I'm selling it. And guess what they're not doing? They have no authority, no legal authority to really truly sell that book. They're missing out on taxes. They don't really understand that formality of it. They don't realize that you cannot sell something and not pay taxes. And if somebody is to tell, eventually this stuff will catch up with you. Yeah, people who are into publishing their authors, they say, oh, I'm going to sell them out of the back of my car. Nobody's going to know. Yeah, they may not know now. But as you become larger and you're bigger, you have to do the right thing and realize you are in business. And when you're in business as an author, you are wearing many, many hats. So like I said, we talked about the accountant and bookkeeping. The other thing is you are an actual business manager unless you decide to hire one. What about the editing and proofreading? What about the graphic artist? What about grant writing? You might need some extra cash. What about all the legal advice you need to think about? Marketing and advertising, and as a specialist, all these things, and printing and shipping, all of this stuff costs money and takes time. But as they always say, if you don't know what you're doing, you should do what? You should absolutely outsource. The bottom line is you need to stay in your lane. And you're going to hear me say this over and over again, because the important thing about being an author is that your best portion of an author is the craftsmanship. And especially if you decide not to take any courses and to educate yourself appropriately, then you're going to find yourself trying to do everything. And then you're going to realize the cost of what it is to be an author up front. It can get a little pricey, but you don't have to overspend. And I'm going to show you about that as well as we continue this amazing today's tips about being an author. The other thing that I think is important, that as you decide that you want to get into becoming an author, and especially if you're a first-time author, you need to understand how to organize your book. You just don't start writing and think that, oh, I'm just going to hand it in and that's the end of it. No, it's a bigger process than that. And as a first-time author, I always suggest that you truly write a topic that you are familiar with. Nothing worse than writing something that is about beach balls, and guess what? You don't even go to the beach, right? Doesn't make any sense. So it's always important that you find something that you're comfortable with, and then make sure that when you're writing, some of the key elements that I think that are important when writing a great book is making sure you're in an environment that you're definitely happy with. You can actually think, you're relaxed, you can be clear on what it is that you're trying to write. And remember too, that writing doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning. It's just really trying to get your story on paper. That's important. Or, if you don't put it on paper, some people may record it. If you don't record it, some people may find other ways, just jotting down notes here and there. Because as an author, you suddenly have these urges where you realize that you just want to write. You don't really care where it's at. I may suddenly just decide to pick up a piece of paper and say, you know what, I got this thought in my mind, I need to get it out. And of course today with our technology, we all can use cell phones and you can easily take notes within your cell phone. But the key is making sure that once you've done all this writing, you have to start organizing everything if you hadn't already done that in the beginning. Some people do it the opposite way, where they say, you know what, here's my chapters, I've got them all lined up, now I'm going to start writing. And then of course, like I said, it could be the opposite, where you're just writing and then you have to go back and figure out what chapters that you're going to focus on first, and the layout of them. So I always suggest that when you are doing a book and you're starting to write, start turning it into a sample book. You can get some simple paper like I have here, fold it, make it look like a book. Pretty simple, right? Fold it again. Then here, next thing you know, you have your cover, and then you have your inside pages, right? It's a pretty simple process. But in that sample of book, you want to make sure that you have to think about your book cover. Sometimes people do a cover page and a credit page, or either one. Some people do a dedication page. That's pretty simple too. You don't have to have all three. It's entirely up to you. Remember, you're self-publishing, so you can say what you want to say and put in the things that you want to put in. Some people do acknowledgments. Those top things: book covers, cover page, credit page, dedication page, and acknowledge page. You can have all that, but it does not necessarily, you don't need to do that. The big thing though is that I do encourage that you have a table of contents. That's important because we want to be able to go in and see what's what. A lot of times as readers, we always enjoy just going and picking out the chapter that we want to go and see and review first. Some people like to go from backwards to front. They want to know the ending of whatever it is that you've written in that story, or whatever you're trying to educate. So have a good table of contents, very important, and make sure that table of contents aligns with the story that you are actually telling. That's important too. Then of course you should have introduction, and then you start with chapter 1, so forth and so on. Then at the end, it wouldn't hurt to have a little something about the author itself. And then some people even take another step further. Before they get to that back cover, they do what they call an order form. Not always something that's necessary today, but these are just little tips that I'm giving you if you're sure that you want to start being an author. These are some things that you can do. Now, of course, the next thing is editing and the book cover. I'm gonna tell you now, doing the editing, book cover, putting everything together, the layout, the formatting of the manuscript, don't try to do it all on your own. Even if you have a template, that's great to have one, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to lay out appropriately for whatever program that you use to print your book. Okay? Listen to what I'm saying. This is very important. So I always recommend that you definitely hire a professional, because the big things that stand out are always the cover. The book that I won my award is this book right here. Memoir, Deception of the Heart, a real look into domestic violence. This is my true story. But the thing I want to talk to you about here is not so much about what's inside the book. Just look at the cover itself. The cover has its dynamics. It stands out, and the reason why it stands out is because it conveys exactly what the title is, and that's important. Sometimes people will make these book covers and then they realize that after the fact that it didn't really hit home. This hits home because the book is Memoir, Deception of the Heart. What do we have here? Amazing, big, beautiful heart, and it's an arrow stuck in it because there's something wrong there, right? So it's important that you make sure that your book cover conveys the message that you are trying to say in the title. So if you do not understand that you're not a drawer, you're not an artist, hire a proper graphic artist. The other thing that's important is the spine of the book. It has to be completed also by a graphic artist. This is the spine right here. So if you don't know anything about that, you can't do it yourself. It's not like putting together the paper one that we had earlier. Okay, it's really, really a huge, important piece when it comes to putting together your book. So another important piece and aspect is that where are you going to get this done? Who's going to do it for you? How can you afford it? That's always the number one question, is how can you afford to get the book done properly? And when you're a first-time author, you really don't want to spend a lot of money, whether you're first, second, third-time author. I'm a 3-time author and a co-author on another book. So I've done this more than once, obviously 4 times, and I do have another book sitting somewhere hiding in my home office. But the key that I'm trying to say is that you want to hire somebody that knows what they're doing and that can afford it. Now, when you're self-publishing and you're doing this all on your own because you may not be able to afford an actual publishing company, I always recommend Fiverr. I love Fiverr. They have independent freelancers that will absolutely give you what you need, and you're not overspending, and when you have a budget. And I always try to keep that budget within $100 when it comes to doing the cover, the spine, and guess what? Even my editing and proofing. If I go over $100, it may be 50 more, a little bit more. But the key is that when you find somebody that you like and you know they can do the job, you want to stick with them, right? So when you go to Fiverr, I always recommend that you look for your top rated sellers or a level 2. Now I'm gonna tell you, when you get in those top rated sellers, it is going to cost you a little bit more, but you got to remember that's what they're there for. If you want the best, you got to pay for the best, right? All right. So then, once you get past deciding on who is going to help develop your cover and develop your manuscript, your editing and proofing and all that good stuff, it's extremely important that you decide who is actually going to publish it and print it. Very different, okay? You can't print this on your own at home. Yeah, you probably could, but guess what? It's gonna cost you a whole lot more than you want to spend, obviously, in ink. And then if you're not binding them properly, you don't know what you're doing, you're wasting time and you're wasting money. So the company that I have used for all my books, back in the day it was called Create Space. Now it's called Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, where you go in. Amazon, obviously is phenomenal. They have come up with all types of great things, but they have made the self-publishing process extremely easy. But the key is, if you don't have everything set up, it's going to cost you. If you have everything set up properly, it is literally free to upload everything, and they, charge you a couple dollars to print per book. And of course, if you're selling it, you're gonna make your money back tenfold. It's pretty simple. But these are some things that you need to know when you get into opening up your account through Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. You need to make sure that obviously that you have your basic information that you want to put in there, and which is your name, maybe your address, those whatever things that they require for you to have. The other thing is that you're going to have is your direct deposit information. I know people get scared and are like, oh, I don't want to give away that type of information. But, well, if you want to get paid, you got to give it up. It's just that simple. That's the way the world is today. Nobody sends you checks in the mail anymore. It's all about direct depositing, right? So that is another step that you will take as you're setting up your account. Some of the things that you will end up having to do, which is a part of the step-by-step process of uploading that manuscript into your Amazon account for self-publishing. And I want to make sure I get this right. So I got my little notes sitting in front of me here that you guys need to understand that you have to have. So the one thing that most people don't think about is their ISBN and their title ID number. The great thing about using Amazon is that they will give you that information for free. You will always have that for your book. Now, you're required to have this. And if you don't want them to do it, then you can actually purchase this separately. Get online. The process is there for you. The government has control of that. And that is something that you are required to have on your books. Otherwise, you can't print them. They're not considered legal. So think about this as you're becoming a self-publisher. Then, of course, they're going to ask you, what's the list price? What does that mean? How much are you going to be charging for this book? Is it going to be $5? Is it going to be $10, $20, $30, $40, $50? I don't know. But believe me, you want to make sure that you get your return on your investment, but also remember that there's going to be a small fee because they are printing this for you, and that's called really print on demand is really what it's called. So when a person purchases that book, $10, $12, I believe Amazon gets probably $3 out of that $10. So obviously you've made only $7, right? So you need to really kind of think about on the pricing. How much time and effort have you actually put into this book, and what do you really truly think it's worth, and what do you believe people are going to pay for it? And one thing I also want to make sure that you understand and I'm clear on is that having a book that, most people think that if it's 500 pages, then they need to charge their life savings and believe people are going to pay for that. Don't get it twisted, people. It's amazing what I've learned being an author in these last several years, that people will purchase a book because of the way it may look on the outside. People will purchase a book just because they like the title and may not ever read what's in it. Always understand that when it comes to the return on the investment, yes, we want to tell a great story, but don't get it twisted and don't get all up in your feelings when people say, hey, I've bought your book. And you'll say, well, what did you like about it? Tell me what really, encouraged you to do so. Some people just want to be supportive. It's not always about what's in the book for them. Some people give them away as gifts. Some people do want to read them. But at the end of the day, the key is that when we're talking about the price, you want to make sure that the price is definitely worth what the book really is about. Okay? So you never want to overcharge, but obviously you don't want to undercharge either, because you want the return on your investment, because as a self-publishing author, you are putting in your own money up front. The book size is another thing that's important. 6x9, 8x10, 5x7. There's all types of different sizes. So you'll need to make that decision before you get to the point where you want to actually have the book printed. And that is where, when we talked about having the manuscript layout done, the cover done, all that, these are the steps that you make before you get to this step. And I talked a little bit about it on my tips, okay? That you need to hire the proper professional to proofread, to edit, format your manuscript, period. Okay? The other thing that's important is the minimum number of pages. If you don't know, the minimum number of pages that you can have before a book can be printed is 70. That is the standard. And a big part of that is because they have to put a spine. Like I talked earlier, the spine. You can't put a spine on a book that is under 70 pages. Then what it actually turns out to be is more of a spiral type book, which becomes more of a workbook versus an actual book. So it's not that you can't be printed. It's not that you can't be considered self-published, but versus you saying that it's an actual book, it will actually be turned into a workbook when you have the spiral type format versus the spine. Okay? Then, of course, is after you've gone through all of that, the next step in Amazon when you're uploading is they're going to ask you to review the book and proof it after you upload it. Because what happens is once you upload that book into their system, if it doesn't fit appropriately and it doesn't meet their requirements, guess what? You have to go back to ground zero and figure out what's missing so that you can upload it. If you do not do it correctly through them, they'll say, hey, we can help you. And yes, they can, but everything comes with a cost. It is not free to have them help you go through that step. So just remember to do these things before you decide to set up that account and, of course, start uploading your book. And then, of course, they're going to ask you your distribution channels. They're going to say, we're going to give you, pick 5. So what that means is, do you want it distributed through Amazon, Barnes & Noble? There may be some other organizations, and of course, they do overseas. So those are some things that there's going to be a list. I don't have all the answers for you here on that portion, but there will be a list available when you do your account and you start to upload. There's going to be a nice little list that you can choose from so you can decide how you want your books to be distributed. And then, of course, the sales and marketing. They have some fantastic tracking systems that you will be able to see. You can go into your account anytime and you will actually be able to see where your sales are at. And then, of course, they're going to send you, I think it's monthly or quarterly, when they actually start having books and stuff that are being sold, you will get that information in return as well. So don't think that you're going to get money and you're not going to know where it's coming from. That'll all be sent to you. Now, the other thing that I want to talk quickly about is the marketing. After you've gotten your book all, you wrote it, you've got the manuscript all set up and ready to go, everything's been proofread, everything's been edited, you've built that Amazon account, and you got that all set up, and you uploaded your book so it can get ready for print. The most exciting part, right, is waiting for that book to come into the mail to you in these nice box, whatever amount that you decide to order, because they're going to give you one for free anyway. But obviously, when you're fresh and you're new self-publishing author, you're always going to want your own books, because most of us will use these books as a tool and a resource for a part of your business, because other people just don't write. There are many people who, write books about what they have within their business. And then other people they're writers for a living. But, people want to be able to have copies available, because you never know when you're going to need one. So the other thing that's important is that when it comes to marketing, to me, I've always thought that the marketing is probably the hardest part. It seems like, once you've gone through the process of getting the book done and getting it published and everything, and then now it's in your hands. It's in your hands. And then you got to figure out, what am I going to do next to get people to buy? Yes, in the beginning, it's pretty simple. People are generally excited for you, and they're going to purchase the book. Pretty easy. But you still want to have copies available. If you don't have enough copies, obviously you want to send them to either your website. So you should definitely have a link available on your website. If you have Facebook small business pages, you should have links there. And of course, through your email, whatever way that you can advertise and market that, so that people can actually purchase the book themselves. That's always important to make sure that you have copies, because you never know if they're going to actually purchase them directly from the distributor, which of course would be Amazon at this point. So the one thing that's important though about understanding your market. So when you wrote the book originally, you had to determine who you are trying to seek to convey your message to, right? So once you've done that, the big thing is now figuring out, okay, did I really hit the market the way I really wanted to? Am I really conveying that message? If it's all for women, then fine. But what is their age bracket? Is it the younger generation? Is it the older generation? Is it that kind of in-between generation? Who are you really trying to focus it? So the biggest thing about marketing is truly understanding who your target market audience is. If you don't know that, you need to, before you start just putting things out there. And really, even in the beginning, when you decided to write the book, you really should have actually started to think about some of those things, because it's really important that as you're writing and the readers start to come about, the key is, anybody could probably read it, but there's a purpose for everything that we do, right? So understand your market. So do a marketing analysis. Look for demographic research. One thing I have learned, the U.S. Census Bureau, now here's a good one for you. Good tip. U.S. Census Bureau has a census business builder tool that you can look online, and you can get more in depth into your market analysis that you want to do, the research that you may want to see. So look online. Again, I'm going to say this, I'm going to get it right. It's a demographic research, U.S. Census Bureau, Census Business Builder tool. Again, Census Builder, Business Builder 2. The CBB is what they call it. So you definitely want to try to research that, because like I said, it gives you in-depth understanding of your demographics. I mean, when I say in-depth, I'm talking from, so if you're looking that you want to reach out to all women, okay, so then your next level you want to go to is the age bracket. Then you may want to go deeper and find out where in the community do those ladies live in that age bracket. So it really is a great tool. I learned about this tool several years ago, and it amazed me because it is so in-depth it's almost overwhelming. But it's something that you should do when you're talking about getting your market research on. Then, of course, another ways that you can market your book is book signings. Book signings are a great way to really get into having those intimate moments with your audiences and talking to them about your book. And then when a purchaser, a consumer comes and buys that book and they actually get to see your name on inside the book and you actually signed it, not so much just because they read it, it has a different meaning for people. So it's always great to do those book signings. Okay. Speaking engagements obviously are another good way to get the book marketed out there. So depending on what the purpose of your book is and what you wrote about and what you're conveying, it's a great way to set up speaking engagements. So in my instance, I talk a lot about domestic violence. So those are some of the audience that I may want to be a part of and have speaking engagements on, right? But of course I do write about other books like I have here, where I'm actually talking about self-assessment. Everything I write really is about self-assessing yourself. And this book is one of my favorites too, because it really gives you this insight of who we are and what we do. And a lot of times we ignore some of the things that we are ourselves because we're so busy living through the lens of others. So this one here, one of my newest ones, Are You Living or Existing? The Pros and Cons of Balance in Life, is probably one of my favorites beyond the domestic violence book. So, think about who it is you're trying to reach. Book like this, you can reach anybody. And it's a good way to market as well, because it talks about more than just one thing. It's an overall type assessment type book. The other way to market your book is social media. Everybody, I'm telling you now, if you don't have social media, you're way, 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 way behind the curve. Extremely important that you have social media platforms to advertise your book. Whether it's your business, it's not, if you're doing a show of some sort, you need to have it. I don't care what it is. YouTube, obviously, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, they're all available. No excuses about, I don't have any of these social. Well, guess what? Get on board, get it done, because you're going to need that, because that's where a lot of people connect. And then you're going to connect further to those people that you may not have thought about, because you don't know everybody, but you will have an opportunity to meet many people down the line. Another good way to market is get on some podcast shows. Ooh, and guess what? I have one of my own, Your Resource for Success podcast, every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I have interviewed well over 200 people in business, and there are many people who are authors that come on my show. I have musicians that come on my show. I have all types of business owners on my show, predominantly women. And I'm international as well. So, it's another great way to get your information out. And then, of course, the last thing that I think is important to do is just what I'm doing, a video. Well, I'll be darned. A good video about your story, about who you are, is another great way to market. So these things that I'm talking about aren't really anything new when it comes into marketing, but if you don't take the steps that you need to take in order to utilize these tools and to make your book not just a bestseller by algorithm numbers, but a bestseller because of everything that you've done, the story that you're telling, the work that you're putting in, you're going to get your return on your investment in so many different ways. It's not always about the money, but it's always about who you can reach, right? So anyway, I hope that you actually enjoyed this business topic of today. And I really, truly hope that you understand what it means to be a self-publishing author, because being a self-publishing author, it does take work, but you can do it. And I do highly recommend that, like I'm talking today, these are tips, tidbits, but I absolutely 100% recommend that you educate yourself. Get into a course. If you don't want to take a course, buy a book, read. If you don't want to do that because you don't have time, then you want to hire the proper self-publishing company to help you publish your books. Don't skim on that if you really, truly want to have the best and be the best of the best. But again, I hope you all enjoyed today's series of 360 in Me. I really had a great time, and I will be back again and to give you some more business tips. But until next time, have a good one. Take care.